The story began on a humid Wednesday night, somewhere in Quezon City, inside a cozy neighborhood where the streetlights hummed softly and the air smelled faintly of pandesal warming in a nearby bakery. A blonde Ukrainian woman named Ivana had been living in the Philippines for only 3 months, and although she had learned to appreciate many Filipino habits, the friendliness of neighbors, the obsession with rice, the karaoke volume levels equal to rock concerts, there was one thing she still couldn't understand: Filipino humor. She didn't dislike it. In fact, she found it fascinating. But every time her Filipino friends burst into laughter over something incredibly corny, she would stare blankly, trying to figure out what she missed. The jokes were fast, the references unexpected, and sometimes the puns were so Tagalog heavy that they went over her head like a jeepney passing a pedestrian without stopping. But she wanted to understand. She truly did, because she noticed something. Filipino humor wasn't just comedy. It was warmth. It was connection. It was somehow a language of love, friendship, and survival. Tonight, she was determined. She had accepted an invitation from her Filipino friend group to join a laughter night, which sounded like a trap, like she was being recruited into a club where the initiation ritual was laughing at jokes that didn't make sense to her. But she showed up anyway. She wanted to learn. She arrived at the small apartment of her friend Carlo, a cheerful guy with a big smile and an even bigger collection of corny joke books. Inside, his living room was already full. 5 friends, pillows scattered everywhere, and a projector displaying random memes from the internet. The moment she stepped in, everyone cheered for her like she was some kind of celebrity guest. She felt shy but welcomed, which was a recurring experience in the Philippines. Carlo clapped his hands loudly. "Guys, the star is here! The Ukrainian who needs to understand Pinoy jokes!" Everyone laughed and waved at her, and Ivana gave a nervous smile before sitting down on a beanbag chair. "So," Carlo began dramatically, "are you ready?" "For what?" she asked. "For the corniest night of your entire life," he said proudly. "Let's start soft." He cleared his throat like he was about to deliver Shakespeare. "Why did the banana go to the doctor?" Ivana paused. She waited patiently. She tried to think logically. "Because it was not ripe?" Everyone giggled. Carlo shook his head. "Because it wasn't peeling well." The room erupted in laughter. Ivana blinked twice. Peeling well? It took her 3 seconds to process the pun. Then she groaned, not because she understood completely, but because she finally noticed. The joke wasn't about intelligence or cleverness. It was designed to be bad. The humor came from the silliness. "Oh," she said slowly, "it is funny, because it is not funny." "Yes!" shouted Carlo. "Exactly! You are learning!" Her friend Sarah high-fived her. "Welcome to corny joke culture." Corny jokes, she realized, were the warm-up of Filipino humor, like stretching before laughing too hard. They were simple, childish, and strangely endearing. And once she accepted that the goal wasn't sophistication, she started relaxing a bit. Carlo continued with another one. "What do you call fake spaghetti?" Ivana already braced herself. "What?" she asked. "An impasta." The room exploded again. She didn't fully get it, but she laughed anyway, partly because their laughter was contagious. She finally admitted to herself that Filipino humor wasn't just about punchlines. It was about shared joy, the kind that filled a room like warm sunlight. After the corny jokes, Carlo announced they were moving to round 2, knock-knock jokes. Ivana had encountered them before, but Filipino versions were different. Carlo stood dramatically at the front. "Knock, knock!" "Who's there?" the group chorused. "Juan." "Juan who?" "Juan to see a magic trick?" The group groaned and laughed. Ivana raised an eyebrow, confused again. "But what is the joke?" "It doesn't matter," Sarah said. "It's knock, knock. It just has to sound stupid." Another knock-knock came immediately. "Knock, knock." "Who's there?" "Lettuce." "Lettuce who?" "Let us in! It's raining outside." The room howled again. Ivana covered her face with her hands. "My goodness. Why so many vegetable jokes?" "Because it's healthy," Carlo said seriously, making the others laugh harder. Suddenly, Paolo, who had been scrolling on his phone, shouted that he found a meme that perfectly represented Filipino energy. He projected it onto the wall, a picture of a cat wearing sunglasses while riding a tricycle. The caption said, "Di mo gets? Basta laugh ka na lang." Everyone screamed laughing. Ivana stared at the meme like it was an ancient puzzle. "Why is cat driving tricycle?" she asked. "Because why not?" Sarah answered. "It's funny because it's nonsense," Paolo added. Filipino meme culture, she discovered, was chaotic and made from pure creativity and impulsiveness. She saw memes involving jeepneys, rice cookers, Jollibee, overly dramatic text overlays, and local celebrities she didn't recognize. But the common theme was randomness. Filipinos love taking something serious and making it ridiculously funny. Ivana slowly smiled. She wasn't fully getting the jokes yet, but she was starting to understand the spirit. Filipinos used humor to connect, to break awkwardness, to turn any situation, good or bad, into something laughable. And that was beautiful. At some point, Carlo dimmed the lights and said, "Okay, now for the most important lesson, Filipino dad jokes." Everyone cheered like a championship game was about to begin. Sarah whispered to Ivana, "Prepare yourself. This is a different species of joke. It is evolutionary, ancient, passed down from generation to generation." Carlo puffed his chest. "Let me demonstrate." He picked up a broom and held it like a microphone. "When I was a kid," he said dramatically, "my dad said, 'Anak, the early bird catches the worm.'" Everyone nodded like they were listening to a wise tale. Carlo continued, "So I woke up early, but no worm." Everyone laughed. Ivana blinked again. But that isn't even a joke." "That's the point!" they shouted. Dad jokes, she realized, weren't meant to be funny. They were meant to be painfully unfunny. Another dad joke came instantly. "What time does a Filipino man go to the dentist?" "When?" asked everyone. "Tooth hurty." Carlo said it proudly, like he invented comedy. Ivana groaned so loudly the group celebrated. Sarah hugged her. "You're now officially Filipino." But the night wasn't over yet. After corny jokes, knock-knock jokes, dad jokes, and memes, there was one more lesson, the biggest one. The one no foreigner fully understood until they lived here long enough. Filipino Hugot lines. Carlo took a serious tone. The lights dimmed further. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. "Everyone," he said, "please prepare your hearts. Hugot is coming." Ivana didn't know what that meant, but she recognized the tension in the air. Hugot lines, she learned, were emotional one-liners that mixed humor and heartbreak. They were dramatic. They were theatrical. They were sprinkled into everyday life the way Filipinos sprinkled calamansi on pancit. Paolo stepped forward first. "Okay," he said in a solemn voice. "Here is my hugot. Parang jeepney. Kahit ayaw na, pinipilit pa rin." The group gasped. Ivana looked around. "What is this? Why is everyone emotional suddenly?" "It means," Sarah whispered dramatically, "like a jeepney. Even if it can't anymore, it still keeps going." Sarah placed a hand on her heart. "It's deep." Ivana nodded slowly. She didn't laugh. She didn't know if she was supposed to laugh. "This is joke? Or sadness?" "Both," they told her. Another friend delivered a hugot. "Parang kape ka. Mapait pero hinahanap-hanap." Everyone swooned. Ivana covered her mouth in awe. "So, this is like poetry?" "Yes," Carlo said proudly. "But instead of winning awards, it wins heartbreak." Someone added another. "Parang Wi-Fi. Ang lapit mo na, pero bakit ang hina mo pa rin?" The room burst into laughter. Ivana laughed too, genuinely. She liked this one. She finally felt like she understood the humor a little. Filipino hugot lines were raw and relatable. Emotional but funny. Dramatic but comforting. She realized they were a coping mechanism, turning heartbreak into punchlines so people could heal together. The night stretched on with more hugot, more memes, more jokes so bad they became good again. Ivana laughed more than she had in weeks. It was different from humor back home. Ukrainian humor was sarcastic, dry, sharp like cold weather. Filipino humor was warm, chaotic, and full of exaggerated drama, and she loved it. Eventually, the group settled down, sprawled on the floor, catching their breath after laughing for hours. Carlo looked over at her. "So, how do you feel?" Ivana thought about it. In her accented English, she said something that made everyone smile. "I think I finally understand a little. Not the jokes, but the joy." Everyone clapped like she had passed an exam. She continued, "Filipino humor is not about joke. It is about feeling together, laughing together, being silly together. It is very beautiful." The room fell silent for a second before exploding into cheers, hugs, and teasing applause. Paolo pretended to wipe a tear. "Grabe ka, girl. That's Hugot already." Then the night went on, filled with stories, food, and more ridiculous jokes. And as Ivana rode home in a tricycle, the cool night breeze brushing her face, she realized something profound. Filipino humor wasn't meant to be understood with the mind. It was meant to be felt with the heart. She smiled softly as she whispered to herself, "Maybe next time, I will try to make my own joke." And little did she know, the next chapter of her Filipino humor journey would change everything, because part 2 wasn't a tea just about understanding jokes. It was about understanding the deeper meanings behind Filipino words, feelings, and life philosophies that humor had been hinting at all along. Ivana woke up the next morning with a slight headache, the kind you get not from alcohol, but from laughing too hard at jokes you technically didn't understand. As she lay in her bed in Makati, listening to the quiet hum of motorcycles outside, she found herself thinking about the night before. She never expected humor to be such a huge part of Filipino life. Back in Ukraine, humor was used sparingly. Dry comments, sarcastic lines, and the occasional dark joke. But here in the Philippines, humor was the glue that held people together. It was a language in itself. And today, she was determined to keep learning. Around lunchtime, she met her friend Sarah at a small carinderia near their office. The place was filled with sizzling sounds, plates clinking, and people laughing loudly as they ate. Ivana liked this environment. It felt alive, it felt warm, and she felt like she was slowly becoming part of it. Sarah waved her over. "Girl, you survived last night. Most foreigners tap out after corny jokes." Ivana laughed. "My brain hurts, but heart feels full." "That's Filipino humor," Sarah said proudly. "Now today, we level up." Ivana's eyes widened. "There is another level?" "Many levels," Sarah giggled. "Today we explore Filipino expressions, not just funny ones, but the ones full of meaning and miscommunication. You're gonna love it." Ivana didn't know whether to feel excited or terrified. As they ate sinigang and fried bangus, Sarah began explaining phrases Filipinos used every day. Phrases that confused Ivana since she first arrived. The first one was simple: ligo na. Ivana had heard it many times. Her Filipino co-workers often said it to each other. Parents shouted it at their kids. Even jeepney barkers used it jokingly with sweaty passengers. One time, Carlo told her, "Ligo ka na, girl," and she thought he was insulting her. Sarah explained it gently. "It means take a bath." "Yes, but why does everyone say it so often?" "Because we want you to be fresh," Sarah teased. "It's like our way of saying, let's get ready, or go prepare. Or sometimes, it's literally because someone smells." Yvonne's jaw dropped. "So Carlo was telling me I smell?" "No!" Sarah burst into laughter. "It's just something we say when someone looks tired or stressed. Ligo na." "It's like a reset button." Ivana paused. "Filipinos reset with bathing?" "Exactly." She took a moment to absorb the information. In Ukraine, a bath was relaxing, but it wasn't used as an all-purpose life solution. Filipinos, however, applied it like medicine. Stressed, ligo. Heartbroken, ligo. About to leave the house, ligo. Fighting with boyfriend, definitely ligo. She giggled to herself. "So if I am sad, I should shower. That's the spirit." Next came a phrase she heard daily but couldn't decode. "Sige na." When Filipinos used it on her, she felt like they were pleading. Sarah explained that the phrase had 100 meanings depending on tone. Go already, come on. Okay, fine, please. Let's go. And even just gentle persuasion wrapped in emotional pressure. She remembered one moment clearly. She was trying to pay at a sari-sari store, but the vendor refused her 1,000 peso bill. Ivana said she didn't have smaller cash, and the vendor insisted it was okay, saying, "Sige na, next time na lang." Ivana panicked, thinking she was stealing. Sarah wiped her tears from laughing. Girl, the vendor was just being nice. Filipinos say sige na because we don't want conflict, and we always believe in the goodness of people. But I stole candy. You didn't. You have utang na loob now. Ivana froze. Utang? What? Sarah placed a hand on her shoulder. Utang na loob. It means a debt of gratitude. It's deeper than money. If someone shows you kindness, you remember it. You appreciate it. And later, you repay it. Not because you have to, but because your heart wants to. Ivana sank into her seat. So now I owe emotional debt? Sarah grinned. Welcome to Filipino culture. As they walked outside after eating, they passed a group of teenage boys joking loudly. One shouted, "Bahala na," before jumping over a puddle. He landed badly, almost tripping, then ran away laughing. Ivana shook her head. I do not understand Filipinos sometimes. Bahala na, Sarah said, hands on her hips, is basically whatever happens, happens. It's about trust, destiny, courage. It looked more like stupidity, Ivana said with a straight face. Sarah's laughter echoed through the street. Yes, sometimes it is, but mostly bahala na means we'll face the challenge even if we're unsure. Ivana found the phrase strangely inspiring. Ukrainians were brave too, resilient in the face of difficulty. Maybe Filipinos shared the same inner strength, just expressed differently. Later that afternoon, they met with their wider friend group at a cafe in BGC. They sat beneath warm yellow lights, surrounded by conversations, music, and the aroma of coffee. It was the perfect setting for another round of Filipino humor lessons. Carlo greeted her with a mischievous smile. Ready ka na? Ivana groaned. Every time you say ready, I am not ready. The group laughed and gathered around. Carlo pointed dramatically at the air. Today's challenge, understanding Hiya. Ivana waited, thinking Sarah had told her about this earlier, but hearing it again in a more serious tone made her lean forward. Hiya, Carlo explained, is like a gentle embarrassment, a sense of modesty, shame, but the soft, polite version. Shame? Like guilt? No, Sarah chimed in. Not guilt. It's more like wanting to be respectful, not wanting to cause trouble, or not wanting to be too bold. Ivana recalled several times she saw Filipinos say, Hiya ako, after receiving praise, gifts, or attention. She had mistaken it for insecurity, but now she realized it was cultural humility. So, she said slowly, Filipinos feel shy to accept kindness because they respect the person giving it? Everyone nodded proudly. She sighed deeply. You have very emotional culture. You're welcome, Carlo said dramatically, placing a hand over his chest. They then moved on to one of the most confusing habits, pakikisama. Sarah explained that this referred to going along with the group, maintaining harmony, avoiding conflict, and being considerate of everyone's feelings. Ivana found this adorable, but also challenging. Ukrainians were blunt. They said things directly. Filipinos, she noticed, avoided hurting others even if it meant swallowing their own frustration. It was admirable and complicated at the same time. Pakikisama means including people, Sarah continued, making sure no one feels left out. And sometimes, Carla added, even if you don't want to do something, you join just to support your friend. Amazing, Ivana whispered. Filipinos have very sensitive hearts. Yes, everyone agreed. That was when Carlo clapped his hands loudly and said, Okay, now we practice with jokes again. Ivana braced herself. Carlo began with a Tagalog pun. Anong isda ang mahilig mag-text? Edi, fishball! Everyone exploded. Ivana blinked. But fishball is not fish. That's the joke! Sarah threw her head back, laughing. Another joke followed immediately. Bakit hindi nag-aaway ang mga isda? Why? Ivana asked. Kasi they don't want to cause a commotion. The group collapsed on the table. Ivana squinted at him. This is illegal. The friends roared even louder. A few customers turned to stare, but Ivana wasn't embarrassed. She was having fun. She didn't fully understand, but she understood enough to feel connected. And that, she realized, was the entire point of Filipino humor: connection. After an hour of jokes and coffee, the group began discussing the deeper emotional side of Filipino humor. Hugot lines that dug into emotions like mining for feelings buried under years of quiet resilience. Paolo leaned back, staring out the window dramatically. Sometimes, the joke is funny because we are hurting. Ivana felt her chest tighten. She had learned enough about Filipino culture to know that sweetness often hid sadness, laughter covered pain, humor softened heavy emotions. Filipinos laugh, Sarah added, because sometimes life is too hard not to. That hit Ivana harder than she expected. She had seen Filipino smiles in jeepneys, markets, offices, and streets. Smiles even when people were tired, stressed, or going through something silently. She admired that resilience. And now she understood that humor was a shield, a comfort, a way to survive. The sun began to set, painting Manila in gold, orange, and soft pink. The group decided to take a walk outside, where the city lights flickered to life and honking cars blended with laughter from restaurants. As they walked, Ivana noticed a group of kids telling jokes to each other, laughing wildly. She saw a security guard at a mall joking with a delivery driver. She saw vendors teasing each other playfully. Everywhere she looked, humor was present, gentle, warm, and contagious. She smiled softly. She loved this country more every day. Later in the night, Carlo challenged her to create her first Filipino joke. "You can do it," he said. "We believe in you." The group gathered around her like she was about to give a speech on national television. Ivana took a deep breath. "I try, okay?" They nodded encouragingly. She cleared her throat. Why Filipinos? Always smiling?" Carlo smirked. "Why? Because, even when life surprises them, they still say, 'Bahala na.'" Everyone froze. Then the group screamed, not with laughter, but with pride. "That's not a joke!" Sarah shouted. "But it's so Filipino!" Carlo held his chest dramatically. "I feel that in my soul." Ivana blushed. She had tried to be funny, but ended up being emotional instead. And somehow, that was exactly right for this culture. They wrapped up the night with Halo Halo and street food, talking about everything from languages to heartbreak to dreams. And throughout the conversation, Ivana realized something important. The humor she was learning wasn't just comedy. It was a reflection of who Filipinos were. Warm, kind, resilient, emotional, and always trying to make each other feel lighter. As she rode home, watching the city lights pass by, she felt something deep and transformative happening inside her. She wasn't just learning jokes, she was learning how Filipinos loved, lived, and connected. And little did she know, Part 3 would be the turning point. The moment when humor would no longer confuse her, but shape her understanding of life, relationships, and the Filipino soul.